Why do we keep score in sport? That's fire prevention, that's firefighting. The leader does more of these things and fewer of those things. So compare this and this to this. We want it to be people focused more than task focused. Just put little dots all over the place. That's why we track our numbers. Hi there. In the book Scaling Leadership by Robert Anderson and William Adams, great book by the way, they identified the number one differentiator of effective leaders. And according to them, and to us, but it's having a strong people focus. And leaders' job, your job, is to make your people better. They in turn will improve results, and in turn make the business better, in turn make your customers happier, in turn ensure the future success of the business. I'll say it again, your people, not just you. We talked about that in the previous episode, but there are more of them than you. You need to figure out how to properly delegate and work on the business, not in the business. The very best leaders take time to intentionally figure out how to balance getting things done with inspiring, guiding, and more importantly, perhaps developing their people. That's exactly why we put together this episode, to help you figure out how we can become more people-focused leaders and ultimately stop managing and start leading. Welcome to Stop Managing, Start Leading, the podcast for leaders who need to stop managing and for managers who want to start leading. I'm your host, Antonio Garrido, the founder and president of My Daily Leadership. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a business founder and leader just like you. I'm a 3-time author. I've led businesses from ground level startups all the way up to Fortune 60s with billions in revenue and thousands of employees. Hey, what if I told you that the secret to exceptional leadership is easier and closer than you think? Every leader and every manager has the potential to become truly exceptional, the kind of leader that they, their people, and their business deserve. And you, my friend, are no exception. You simply need to discover the mindsets, tools, competencies, and habits to unlock that potential. And that's where we come in. If you haven't already, say hello to our trusty friend, the subscribe button. And why don't you subscribe to the My Daily Leadership YouTube channel today for actionable insights and practical tools in our podcast episodes, which drop every single week. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, don't forget to stop by and visit our other good friend, the follow button. Both of these buttons will help you to level up your leadership. So do it now. Story time. Well, not really a story, but let's just remind ourselves a couple of things. John Lennon, of Beatles fame, who was a genius, by the way. I know you know that. I heard just the other day when he first arrived in Russia and somebody shoved a camera in his face and said, "Is Ringo Starr the best drummer in the world?" And John Lennon said, "I don't even think he's the best drummer in the band." But anyway, there you are. So John Lennon said that life is what happens to you whilst you're making other plans. Life is what happens to you whilst you're making other plans. Sometimes doesn't business feel like that maybe? Woody Allen said, and practically everything that Woody Allen says always makes me laugh, but he said, if you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. If you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. Love that one. I had a boss once whose favorite expression was, a plan gets 90 days late, one day at a time. Plan gets 90 days late, one day at a time. In case you haven't figured it out already, in today's episode, we're talking about plans, and more specifically, all of the things that seem to serve to keep us from getting the things done that we as leaders really need to do. In a future episode, we'll understand why we let ourselves become distracted or diverted, but for today, let's just start by understanding how to stay focused on the things that we really should focus on. So, if you typically join us on YouTube, you'll know that we always introduce you to a critical leadership model by drawing it out. We're visual learners here at My Daily Leadership. We're VLs. If you're listening on a podcast platform because you're much more of an auditory learner, what we call ALs, that's perfectly fine too. But if you want to see the content that we're about to talk through drawn out in real time, please switch over to YouTube now, or later, but the models, you'll be able to see them there. And sometimes they're hard to describe. Now, whatever we draw in this episode and all past and future episodes will also be available to download online for free at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. So, without further ado, let's jump in. You know that we always start with a question. So here's today's question. Today's question is, and think about it as we're going through it, why do we keep score in sports? Hi there. You'll have to excuse some of the footage of our model drawing in today's episode. It seems for some reason that our camera was having a bad hair day, certainly in the first half of the episode. Don't forget, all of our models are available to download on our website, so please do head there for clear, steady, and beautiful copies of the models from today's episode. And we'll get this fixed as soon as possible. Thanks for your understanding. See you soon. You're going to go, well, how else do we know who's won? Well, for sure, right? So that's one of the reasons that we keep score in sports. And by the end of today, hopefully I'm going to introduce you to another reason, or perhaps two. You'll see that I saved a little bit of time by drawing a X and Y axis, cross in the middle for those ALs, auditory listeners, right? So we've just got a line, vertical and horizontal split in the middle. What I want us to think about is, let me just back up the truck just for a second. If I were to ask anybody here, hey, how might we lose weight? Okay, I could ask 10 people how I might lose weight, and I'm going to get 10 different plans, right? Some people will say, well, you need to do more of this, and intermittent fasting, and carbs, and exercise, and drink lots of water, and get lots of sleep, right? We all know, right, kind of how to lose weight. We know what that plan would look like. Some of us failed to execute on that plan, but we won't go into that today. My point is we all kind of know how to do it. What it will require, though, is if we have a plan to lose some weight, to then track how we're doing. What are we eating? How much are we sleeping? How much are we drinking? All of that good stuff, right? Kind of like a food diary. Maybe track our weight as it's coming down. Maybe if we're introducing some of the gym into that, we'll track our reps or mileage or distance or time that we may be on the elliptical. You get the idea. We would track what we're doing so that we can look at the inputs to see what happens to the outputs. Okay, very familiar principle. Another way of kind of thinking about all of that is something called a time and motion study. If you know what a time and motion study is, lots of manufacturing plants use it, manufacturing organizations. What they basically do is they figure out how long does it take for a bunch of individuals on a particular part of the production unit to make or a particular thing or to execute a particular action, a time and motion study. And basically they track how long it takes to do things. You've all seen production plants where they're making cars. So a car plant where the car is moving at a certain speed and then people are bolting things onto the side of the car, right? You're all familiar with that. Well, who decides how fast that car goes? The car doesn't do the same speed throughout the whole plant. There are certain parts of the plant where it goes faster and certain parts of the plant where it goes slower. Why? Because somebody's had a look at what they're making and figuring out, well, how long does it take to bolt these things on? How long does it take to get that wiring in there? You get the idea, right? That's all time and motion studies. Well, I kind of want us to think about time and motion studies for you right now. So let's just look at this model, see how that maps to that, okay? And then losing weight or getting any other goal achieved. Okay, so let's have a look at this kind of time and motion study for leaders. So here we go. Let's write some points on our axes. What I'd like us to think about is we could be people focused over here. People focus. We could, of course, be task focused. So let me see if I can get task focused over here. Task focus. So at any particular point in the week or the month or the day, right, whatever we're doing, we could ascribe that or attribute that to, oh, this thing here is a task. It's a very task-focused activity. Or this thing here is very people-focused. Can they be the same thing? Yeah, but we're not going to split hairs at this point in time. Or we could ask ourselves, is the thing that we're doing being, is it very reactive, or is it being proactive? So at any particular moment in time, if we tracked a week, and if somebody was doing a time and motion study on us, and they followed us around with a clipboard, and at every 15 minutes kind of said, okay, what are they doing now? Is what they're doing proactive? In other words, it's part of a plan that they had, or is it being reactive? In other words, something's happened that's pulled them away to do that thing. You know what proactive means, you know what reactive means. Is it a task-focused thing, or is it a people-focused thing, right? So at any particular time, we could have somebody follow us around, tick some boxes, and at the end of the week, or the month, or the day, or whatever, we could then plot them onto this graph. We could say, okay, we did a bit of this, we did a bit of that, we did a bit of this, we did a bit of that, right? And we can start to plot what it is that we're doing. Of course, we're not going to spend all of our time in one particular quadrant, but where should we spend our time as a leader? Now, as a manager, you might say, okay, well, as a manager, we're going to do lots of task-focused things, and maybe we're going to be proactive or reactive. Don't know, right? You can say, well, a leader does more people-focused things and is more proactive. So now we're starting to think that, okay, well, a manager does more of these things and fewer of these things, and a leader does more of these things and fewer of those things. Okay, so what you could then do, you could even, I'm going to make a real hash of this, I know, but you could kind of figure out some kind of gradient scale on here, right? If you figured out some kind of scale, and I know I haven't drawn this to scale at all, but you get the idea, right? That if you think to yourself, well, do you know what? I've had a look at the last one, and I reckon I've been around, if I averaged it out, and I've not done this very well, but about 70% of my time has been proactive. And I'm going to say, therefore, about 30% of my time has been reactive, because 70 and 30 is 100. I didn't even need to tell you that, did I? And you could also say, well, you know what? About 70% of my time has been people focused, and let's try and figure out if that's also 70. Maybe not perfect, but you get the idea. Which means that 30% of my time has been task focused. You get the idea. And that means that all of the dots have kind of fallen into that sort of area here for all of our 15-minute segments. And we could probably, if we were reasonably good at, do you know what? I wasn't bad, was it? This individual list, right? 70% proactive, 30% reactive, 70% people focused, 30% task focused. I missed my 30 off here, right? Kind of, they live in this sort of egg in here. Okay. Well, we like that egg. Let's just think about what we call all of these, what each of these individual kind of quadrants looks like. So the person that is, if they spend all of their time in this quadrant down here, which is task focused and reactive, mainly that they're doing more than anything else, they are managing. So we could start paying attention. We could start thinking, what am I doing at the moment? Is this people focus or task focus? Is it proactive? What is it? Okay, it's another one of those. Half an hour later, what am I doing right now? It's more task focus and reactive again. half an hour later. Okay, task focus and reactive again, an hour later. Okay, reactive, task focus. I guess I'm managing today, right? So you get the idea. So management lives mainly, there's no absolutes, I get it. I also see the irony of there's no in absolutes in that sentence of absolutes, right? But task focus and reactive is kind of what managing looks like. Well, that kind of means that proactive and people focus is what leading looks like, right? I bet you were minds ahead of me there, right? Reactive and people focus, what would you think that is? If you spend most of your time being reactive and people focused, well, that's kind of more like HR type stuff, right? Why? Because people focus HR. And when I say HR, I don't necessarily mean recruiting, perhaps, unless it's reactive because somebody's left and you didn't want them to leave. So let's just call this resolving conflict. Resolving conflict. And let's say, general people issues. And that leaves us up here, which is more than anything, which is proactive task focused. More than anything, I guess we could call that compliance. What does compliance look like? Well, you know what compliance looks like. That's quality control, risk management, and I guess I'm going to call this fire prevention. Well, if I'm going to call that fire prevention, then I'm going to call this firefighting. That makes sense. Well, what's leading then? Well, that's fire prevention, that's firefighting. This is more like, well, we'll come to it in a second. So, let me just say what else is in here. This is empowering, this is vision, and empowering. It's all about vision. It's about direction, but in as much as it's about coaching, coaching is guided discovery. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to understand now what this looks like. So we can do a time and motion study. We can figure out, hey, listen, am I being reactive? Another word for that is tactical. Or am I being proactive? More than anything, I'm being strategic. Am I just being people focused? We call that pull, right? We're pulling people along. Or is it task focused and we're pushing people to do things? So that's that push and that pull. So we've got strategic, tactical, push and pull. You get the idea. So before we go any further, we're just going to take some time for cake and a sticky bun. If you're finding yourself nodding along to this episode, thinking, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Perhaps because you see yourself as a kind of down and to the left leader, right? Or a manager, naughty, right? So, well, there's only one way to find out, right? So we've created a downloadable version of this very model, the one that we've just been walking through in today's episode, and it's called the Time and Motion Study of Leadership Effectiveness. We've talked about time and motion, right? So the Time and Motion Study of Leadership Effectiveness. That's the tool you're looking for. Now, this particular tool allows you to actually do the thing that we've been talking about, track your leadership activities honestly and as accurately as you can over the course of the next, say week, 10 days. What this will do, it will give you enormous clarity on how you're actually spending your work week or investing your work week, perhaps. Now, at the end of the 10 days, you'll be able to properly understand whether or not you are a firefighter, fire preventer, conflict resolver, or a future-proofer. That was the one that we didn't draw in. I'll draw it in a second. Remember, you can't begin to fix a problem without diagnosing it first. So that means you're going to have to start to do it. So head to www.mydailyleadership.com or click the link in the description and follow the instructions to download the tool. Now, I promise. It's a really, really, really valuable exercise to undertake. But only do it if you're committed to taking action afterwards. Remember, action bias is a leader's number one resource. If you just download the thing, track it, and just go, oh, that was interesting, and then don't do anything about it, it's going to be a bit like, remember at the beginning of the episode we said somebody wants to lose weight, and one of the things that someone's going to say is, well, why don't you join a gym? So great, so you rush out and you maybe look online and you find the best, you do all of that whole, I don't know, is there a TripAdvisor for gyms? Well, you get the idea, right? So you figure out what's the right gym to go to, and then you go and buy your membership. But then you never go. So buying a gym membership doesn't help you achieve your goals, right? Action bias helps you reach your goals. What does that mean? It means get your Nike second skin pants on, your trainers or your sneakers, and get down to the gym. I'd love to be the guy, on the membership desk that has to deal all day, every day with somebody coming in saying, I want to cancel my gym membership. And then they say, well, what's your name and where do you live? And they do all of that click-clacky stuff and have a look and say, why do you want to cancel your membership? Well, I haven't lost any weight and I've been a member for 18 months. Yeah, you've only been in 3 times. So you get the idea. So please do print it out. Please do go through the exercise, and then please do something about it. Okay, lecture over. As always, swing by the comments section. Share your thoughts. You've probably got something to say about what I just said. Share your questions and your aha moments for this episode. And if you haven't already done so, what are you waiting for? Subscribe or follow us for more. Let's go back to this model. Then we're going to just draw it again a couple more times. So as I just gave it away, this area here, this is future-proofing. And if you think about it, what's our job as a leader? Our job is to future-proof the organization so that it's in a good state, with good position and healthy for the things to come. So how do you future-proof an organization? It's really simple. Not easy, but simple. You future-proof yourself, you future-proof your people, and they will future-proof your business, right? So your job, to use a Wayne Gretzky analogy, you got to skate to where the puck is going to be. You got to skate to where the business is going to be. And talk about dynamics in the business world right now. Look at AI and agents, large language models and stuff. If they're not changing your business right now, well, of course they are, because it's changing everybody's business, right? So the world moves on apace, and your job is to future-proof yourself first, your people second, and by default, your organization third. All right, so let's go and have a look at what this looks like in another way. So for those auditory learners listening on podcasts, I'm just going to draw the same thing that we've just drawn. I'm just going to draw a few of them a little bit smaller, right? So these are smaller versions of the same thing that we've just done, because I want to make another point. That if you're the kind of leader, so you've been tracking you've been doing your time and motion study, and you figure that you're probably, 60% in terms of reactive, 40% here, and you're 10% here, and 90% here. So if we start to track those, and then drew our little egg around this person, well, that's quite different from the one that we had earlier, right? This is a completely different person who's spending most of their time down here, which is in the firefighting, managing, firefighting. You get the idea. This particular person, let's say, is spending all of their time over here, little of their time over here. Again, I do apologize for those listening rather than watching. It's going to be very, very hard to see, but they're spending all of their time kind of in this area. If we drew those two together, it's a completely different thing again. You get the idea. So what does that mean? That this model beautifully fits into another one of our principles. So this is proactive, this is reactive, Let's put the whole words in and not be so lazy. Proactive. This is people focused. This is task focused. So what do we want? We want people largely to be proactive. We actually want the 70-30. Oop, 70 is more like that. 30 is more like that. We want 70 over here. It's probably about that. We want 30 over here. It's probably about there. So compare this and this to this, right? This is another perfect example of our principle of up and to the right. So when we say, in terms about time and motion, proactive, people focused, it's another up and to the, it's another up and to the right model. Now there are times, of course, in high stress or high problem, right, where we've got to be very people focused. There are other times where we've got to be very task focused. There are other times where we've got to be very reactive. Of course, I get it. But situationally, let's do that. In our last video, we talked about playing squash, where you always go back to the tee. You go and do something and you come back to the tee. You go and hit another ball and you come back to the tee, right? And if none of that makes sense, go and see our last video, right? So situationally, we have to move around. We have to be very flexible. I get it. But largely, directionally, we want to be, as far as this model is concerned, most of our models, 95% of our model, I'm going to guess, up and to the right. That's what it is that we're after. Okay, so wouldn't it be interesting then, just whilst we continue on with this thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we had our other board members do the same thing? Because then we're going to start to, if we start doing this exercise for you and this exercise for all of the other board members, and we looked at our senior managers and they did it too, and their managers did it, and as we move down, it'd be lovely to see how it's going slightly down and to the left, and as we move up the organization, we're going more and more up and to the right. Well, isn't that a great view of culturally how you're setting up your organization? Because culturally, if all you're ever doing is running around firefighting and spending no time in fire prevention, guess who's the arsonist? Well, have a look in the mirror. That's where the arsonist is, right? So that's something to think about too. Okay, well, I hope today made sense. I hope you can use this quick, super quick, like sketch model. You can draw it out real easy. Just put a scale gradient against it, right? Start tracking where you are for the week. Just put little dots all over the place, right? And then put a big circle or a big egg around the dots. So you'll be doing it slightly the way that I'm doing it now, right? And then you see where you're going to live, or you see where you have been living. And if you're happy with where you've been living, terrific. But if you're not, then do something about it. So I think that's what I wanted to say today. We want you to be 70% proactive to the extent that you can, 30% reactive, except in times of high stress and crises. We want you to be people focused more than task focused, right? We talked about that in our very first episode. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I've whetted your appetite. I hope you use the model. That's really why we do these things, so that you'll start to use the model, start to change some of your thinking. So thanks once again for tuning in to Stop Managing, Start Leading, Move Up and to the Right, my daily leadership podcast. Whatever your reason for listening or watching today, I do hope it offered you something of value, even if it's just this little one tool or tip or technique that improves your leadership ability by only 1%. I've just remembered, why do we keep score in sports? We keep score in sports so that we can get better. That's why we track our numbers. Remember, there's an immense amount of power in marginal gains over time. Start tracking stuff. There's also power in community, so please share your questions and insights and topic suggestions with us in the comments. We do pay attention to them, I promise. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can do that, and whilst you're down there, why not give this video a like? It does need a like quite desperately. And why not subscribe too? And for our auditory learners, our ALs, you're only getting half the story. Head over to YouTube, where today's episode really comes to life. You see the same model again and again and again. It all makes sense. I don't know how to describe where we put all of those dots. All the models are also available as ever to download at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. Of course it is. And in the spirit of people-focused leadership, our next episode will turn the spotlight away from you a little bit and more onto your team. We'll explore how to identify who amongst your team members are your A players, who are your B players, or heaven forbid, your C players, how they got there, what we're going to do about it. I'm Antonio Garrido with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. You're gorgeous. I must say, you're looking terrific today. Until next time, as ever, by wisdom and effort, see ya.